Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining me on this episode where I have the pleasure of interviewing Allie LaRoe, songwriter and front woman for the Seattle based indie folk band The Feral Folk. In this conversation, we discuss some habits and life perspectives she learned from being a pastor's daughter turned musician, why she practices celebration rather than gratitude, and what she learned about chasing her dream in music. We have a lot of fun, so hang on for it. And don't forget to listen to the end. After the interview, I'll answer a question from the audience. This time, I'll answer a question about how to define a better life. Hey, Ali. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, thank you. So you actually have a really interesting background because you did do your studies, to get a degree, but you're a musician.
Mhm.
Um, and you're actually making a living from that today, I believe. So why don't you tell us about your background and how you got to there, so we can understand a little bit better who you are.
Well, I've always loved music. I've been making it since I was a child, but there was this point where I really felt like I had to be more practical and enter the real world.
Hmm.
So when I was in college, I was in line to do the music classes, but I looked around me and everybody there was kind of male. I mean, they weren't kind of male. They were male. It was a very male-dominated
I'm
industry.
sorry, but that is a phrase I'm going to have to remember.
And I just didn't really feel like I had the support, and I felt like I didn't want to try that hard.
Okay.
So I decided to try to find something else that was a little bit more practical that I felt like I would get support in.
Mhm.
And so I tried a bunch of different classes. I took a lot of night classes, and I kind of settled on anthropology because I'm really interested in people and culture and why people make the decisions that they make. But then once I got out of college and started trying to be very practical and live in the real world, I just really felt like it wasn't for me. I felt like I wasn't getting to express myself, and I'm writing songs constantly, and that is generally frowned upon in offices. Um, People don't like it when you ask them to give you a second to write down the lyric that just popped into your brain when they're trying to schedule their appointment, or
Well,
when you're just
I
humming to
have to
yourself
say
in
that,
general.
yeah, I was going to say, when we first spoke, there was a point where you were looking for something on the computer. You knew
Mm-hmm.
I could hear you, and yet there you were humming to yourself. And I made the comment that I can hear you. And you said,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm always doing
Yeah, constantly singing and humming. So um, when I was 23, I quit my day job, and then I immediately failed. Um, like just the ground dropped out of from underneath me, and pretty much since then, it's been a process of learning and growing, and I've built up the momentum, so I'm able to support myself with it now.
that. That's actually impressive because making money from music is practically impossible from what I know.
I think that there's a lot of things where we tell ourselves that we can't do it, but the reality is somebody's already doing it somewhere, and it's just a matter of finding your own route instead of trying to do it the way that maybe you see a large record label doing it, because genuinely your average individual independent artist is not going to make money from it if they're trying to do it with the same intensity that a record label that has millions of dollars is trying to do it. But if you're focused on your strengths, like your ability to make closer relationships because you're not so separated from your audience, then there's an alternative path that opens up for you.
Okay. Can you discuss that a little bit, or?
Absolutely. I've found that works best for me, and when the most synchronicity kind of flows, is when I'm really focused on my own strengths instead of trying to be what other people have kind of decided is successful. So for example, I'm a night owl. I've always been a night owl. I'm never going to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and have a long morning routine and do all of that. But that works great as a musician, right? Because I'm often at times up until 2 a.m. And so the more that I've leaned into the fact that my creative hours are in the evening instead of trying to put them at the beginning of the day, the more energy that I then have for my shows and the more energy I have for my songwriting later.
Okay.
Similarly, when I'm focused on relationships as opposed to networking, when I'm genuinely really curious about the people who are running the bars and the community that they've made there, and I want to actually hang out with my fans and I greet everybody who comes in and I'm so excited that they're there, then the momentum that that builds is ultimately the foundation of my business.
That makes sense. So wait, when people come to your shows, you greet them?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't have so huge of an audience. If it gets to the point where we're having like regular 200 person sold out shows, that might get overwhelming. But when we have, you know, all three bands are bringing more like 75 people, I can do that. I can do 75 people.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think it's also something that I learned from being a minister's kid, because that was a part of how the ritual of that whole Sunday morning happened. Is you start by greeting people and shaking everybody's hand and making eye contact and having coffee and telling them you're so happy that they're there. So I like,
Oh,
I
wait,
guess,
wait.
greeting
Oh, hold on.
people.
That's not just in the movies. I'm sorry, Jewish. I did not go to church.
No, it's not just in the movies. And I feel like, while I'm not into church either, it's one of the things that people miss about that kind of community. And I've tried to find other ways to bring it into people's lives.
Okay.
That and casseroles.
Okay, yeah. No, so see, the casserole part, that I understand. Because after
Mm-hmm.
synagogue on Saturdays, you usually have a little mini meal right before you go back home.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
like somebody's sick and so you bring them casseroles and then they end up with like 10 casseroles because that's how people show that they want to make sure that person
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
So.
Yeah. After my mother gave birth, we had people coming over to the house to clean the house and cook her food.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's
So
just
that I can
a
relate.
really wonderful way of showing you care.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the music. So that's what you brought from being a pastor's kid to the music scene.
Yes.
Okay. What else? What else did you bring from your childhood? What else did you bring from your childhood? Yeah. To helping you in being a musician that can actually make a living from it?
It helps the lyrics quite a bit, honestly, because I feel like one of the other things that I really learned from my upbringing was finding the sacred in everything, finding the magic and the mystery and the indication that there's all of this potential and possibility. And so I try to bring that into the music that I write as well and really encourage people to feel that even when they can't see that within their lives through the words that I write.
That I love.
Thank you.
Okay. So, for example, what would be if somebody comes to you just as a friend? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Put it aside, but I mean, that is what you do. You write lyrics, amongst other things. You have a friend who's just stuck in the day-to-day, the routine, and has a hard time seeing, the beauty of life. What would you be able to tell them to help them?
I mean, I feel like it all starts with celebrating the small pleasures. And I practice celebration as opposed to gratitude because I feel like it just comes so much easier. And sometimes with gratitude, there's this heaviness of the things that you feel like you should be grateful for, but maybe you don't feel that way in a moment, right? But it's so easy to just celebrate, like my cat snoring on my bed right now. Like it just makes me so happy with no heaviness around it. And so I feel like
Oh,
that's
that's
where it
interesting.
starts. Is it's
Okay.
just the small pleasures, a good cup of coffee is so easy to celebrate. Or
So how do you celebrate it though?
I just try to
What's
feel that
the
joy.
difference?
I just tell myself I'm celebrating this right now. Or I really try to give myself time to actually experience how good something makes me feel. Like I'm wearing this cheetah print dress right now. It's a wrap
Okay.
dress. It was kind of a splurge, but I just feel so good every single time I wear it. And I try to give myself space to just not take that for granted, because I feel like there's so many little joys in our day, every day, that we don't allow ourselves to just pause and appreciate.
Nice. Okay. I never thought about that. See, I've always, personally, I have a gratitude journal. Okay, every
Mm-hmm.
single day, at the end of the day, I write something for which I'm grateful. I don't do three things; I do one thing, and
Yeah.
yes, they sometimes repeat themselves because saying that every single day there has to be something new. I mean, that's also a little bit too much, right?
Yeah.
Um, but this idea of celebrating, I love, because celebrating something multiple times absolutely makes sense. When I, for me, it's my pigeons, for example, right, or my cockatiel, the
Mm-hmm.
birds, just like your cat. I really like that idea.
Well, and it feels like you're toasting the universe. I like the energy of like lifting a metaphorical glass of champagne and saying, cheers to all of this beautiful stuff that happened during my day at the end of the day.
I'm going to try to implement that in my life instead of, well, I won't do instead of the gratitude journal immediately, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the difference in feeling that I get from celebrating something versus being grateful for it.
Yeah, I think it's a helpful tool. Different people have different relationships with gratitude. Sometimes it can be really helpful. For me, it felt like a block. So I just worked my way around it with my champagne.
I may try it with whiskey, or being true to my state roots, I may go for rum. Uh,
Mm,
but no, I really, because for me, being the gratitude journal is, I don't meditate, for example. Everybody says, oh,
yeah.
you should meditate. I don't meditate. I don't connect to it. I don't, it's a chore for me, right?
Yeah.
And the gratitude journal, to be fair, it does help. I'm not going to say it doesn't help, but it
Yeah.
also felt a bit like a chore,
Yeah.
Um, we're celebrating. I mean, hell, who's not going to want to celebrate something, right?
Yeah, it feels so light and easy, and it doesn't come with so much baggage. And the other thing that I really noticed that turned around for me when I started just celebrating
Yeah.
is I really want to put more attention on the people who care about me, on the things that are going well. So I have this tendency to ruminate. I am an excellent ruminator. It's great for songwriting. It is bad for life.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if I'm looking at my energy like it's money, like it's my bank account, then I don't want to be investing so much of my energy into the things that didn't go well and not investing into the things that do go well. So when I celebrate, it's making a deposit into the things that really please me, so that I'm focused more throughout my day on where I can invest in those things more.
So, give me an example.
So when I started this, it was shortly after my intense and fabulous failure. And having a lot of energy focused on things that were not going well, and things that I didn't like, and things that I couldn't control, especially. I wasn't really fond of the people I was living with. I wasn't really fond of the place I was living, and trying to be grateful for those things when they were actively like kind of causing harm in my life just didn't feel authentic. It felt like
Right.
I needed to change those things. I didn't want to be grateful for them, when like the reality was I needed to get out. Um, and so being able to celebrate, being able to realize that I didn't want to be constantly just repeating the things that I didn't like to myself, that was the whole point. The point wasn't even necessarily to feel a certain way. The point was to just not be spending so much of my day thinking about the things that caused me pain and then like hanging out in that pain. So I began to sort of focus on the neighborhood that I lived in, which was beautiful. And I could take these long walks and
Okay.
really enjoy these beautiful views. And there's so many mountains in Washington. And on a clear day in Seattle, you can see so many like 2 different mountain ranges. You can see Rainier. And so these things that were bigger than my situation started to be my source of pleasure and my source of celebration. And then more and more, I was able to kind of build momentum and make the changes that I needed to change because I was feeling good, because I was seeing solutions. I wasn't just seeing the problem over and over and over again.
Okay. And so so you explain how you started. How do you use it now? Because obviously you're in a very different place.
Mm-hmm.
So how do
Now
you
my
use it
best friend,
Yeah.
my best friend and I have these like 2-hour long phone calls every couple of days.
Oh my God.
Where, I mean, part of it's so long because she has 3 children that she homeschools. So we'll get a little bit of conversation and then somebody will need something, right? I feel like anybody who has a friend that has kids has experienced those really long phone calls.
The only friend I have who has kids, the kid is a baby of a few months old, so not yet.
Not yet. Be prepared. Be prepared for it to take a long time to finish a sentence.
I'll remember that. Okay.
So, and then we start our days with coming up with at least 5 things that we're celebrating, and then using that energy, that like joy, to then talk about how we want our day to go and the things that we're ultimately building for ourselves. But we're kind of using it as a catalyst as we're creating our to-do lists and creating our visions.
Well, so that's interesting. You do it in the morning. See, I would think of doing it in the evening after the day is done.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you
I
prefer
think I
the
do
morning?
it both times, but that's my practice now.
Well, see, if you're taking with a glass of champagne each time, I get it.
Just a little whiskey in my coffee in the morning.
There you go. An Irish
Yep.
coffee. All right. No, but seriously though, so you do it in the morning, in the evening, like both times, or?
I kind of do it throughout the day at this point because it's just so easy. Anytime I see something, it's just so easy to be able to be like sitting there. My neighbors think I'm crazy because I do spend a lot of time staring at their gardens, and I'm worried that they think that I'm like casing out their houses, but there's so many beautiful gardens in my neighborhood. But I do take time now to just sit and really, really let myself enjoy and celebrate beauty as it comes in continually. So I think it might start with an evening practice, but then the more that you do it, the more you're like, why just limit this to the evening? Because it makes me feel so good. And I want to feel good all the time. So no champagne necessary once you get to the point you're doing it all the
time. This actually reminds me, I was walking by on a street in a small town in Paris, well, next to Paris, and it was a few weeks after Christmas, and I saw out of one of the houses they had tied, but it seemed like he was tied from the neck, a Santa from one of the windows.
Okay.
You know, it really makes you wonder what was going through their mind. Oh, let's, hang Santa from the neck, like outside the window. And the thing is, you could see people walking right in front, and nobody noticed. Nobody was looking at it, And at some point, like, I stood there for a few minutes. I took a picture, obviously. I stood there for a few minutes, and I asked someone, I said, this, like, you have no questions about this, right? And he looked at me like, oh, I hadn't noticed this up until now. I'm like, but that's the thing, people walk by, people do things, and they just don't notice what's around them.
It's very true.
Like a hung Santa. Well, no,
like a hung Santa, which is such an odd and quirky thing.
It is. It really is.
And could be interpreted in so many ways.
I know. It really brings up I really wanted to knock on their door and ask them about it, but I did not. Maybe next time. Okay, so first of all, I have to tell you thank you because this was an idea that I was not expecting and which I definitely intend to implement.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm glad I could offer something up to the collective.
Always. What type of music do you usually play?
The name of the band is actually, so the name of my band is The Feral Folk, and I feel like it's actually a very accurate description where we have the songwriting and some of the more delicate finger picking elements and a lot of fun harmonies from folk music. But if you can
Okay.
imagine that, but raised by werewolves, um,
Yes.
that is essentially what we sound like. There's a lot more heavy toms and kind of some rock and grunge elements that come into play as well.
Okay. And where can we find this music?
You can find us at foxandphoenixrecords.com.
Wait, Fox, I get. Why Phoenix?
I really like the idea of having a record label that is both about having the cleverness of a fox to innovate and the ability of the phoenix to rebirth, to reimagine.
Oh, okay. How long did it take you to come up with that, or was it just natural?
It was pretty natural. I also just like foxes a lot. I have like 10 fox mugs, and I have always really liked phoenixes, and I'm an Aries, so I'm a fire person. So it just kind of naturally combined.
Okay. I have a phoenix on my forearm.
Very cool. There's a
See,
process
there you go.
of rebirth that I think happens as part of the entrepreneurial journey. There's a point in which you have to realize that you have to make the choice to leave behind the identity that you used to have and really lean into discovering what you're what you're capable of. That is very Phoenix-like.
So for me, the reason I love the Phoenix that much was during my dark time. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love the fact that the Phoenix was actually the one who decides my time is up. Let me go up in flames, right?
Yeah.
In my non-dark times, which thank God has been for a long time at this point, I love the fact that from the ashes, from his brokenness, from the what his life was, that's what he uses to rebuild, to be reborn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good message for either negative or positive times, but it's a good one.
Absolutely.
Cool. Where else can we find you? I'm assuming that on the website there are links to everything.
Yes, the website will tell you more about me. It'll lead you to our music. It'll show you where we are on social media, but you can find us on Spotify or all of your favorite streaming services as The Feral Folk. And then we're on Facebook where I'm doing regular live streaming shows. And
Okay.
that's facebook.com/The Feral Folk Music. If you
Obviously,
land
the
on a
link will
big cat
be.
rescue, that's not us.
What? I'm sorry. What? I was about to say the link will be in the show notes. What cat rescue?
Oh, there's another cat. There's a cat rescue named the Feral Folk, which is like a big cat rescue in California. And sometimes they have to direct people to our music because they'll get tagged at a folk show.
Okay. So guys, if you go onto Facebook and you see on the page a lot of cats, it's not them.
Or at least a lot of big cats. I do post a lot of pictures of my cat, but it's just one cat, and he's a domestic. So.
Okay, he's not a feral cat. What's
Yeah.
your cat's name?
His name is Smokey, and he's a big, like, Maine Coon mix with long gray hair, and he is a delight.
Well, they're gorgeous, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Allie, thank you. Thank you for coming out to be interviewed. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
Absolutely, and thank you also for the idea about celebration.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. So have a great day, and everyone, all of the links will be in the show notes, so don't worry. I'll definitely add you to Spotify so I can listen to your music a little bit more. And for this week's question from the audience, how do you define a better life? Personally, I define a better life, a life which you are happy to live, a life you are excited about and will actively work to maintain. For each one of us, that life will look different, of course, but you can look at the traces left behind. Those are all the same. People will not give up a good life without a fight. People will not be excited by a life which is not good. People will not work to maintain a life they do not like. Those are the traces of a good life. So what makes a better life? Wherever you may be on your life journey, whatever it may be that you want to improve, those results are the better life, of course. But the journey to improvement itself and the journey to achieving those end goals are also a part of a better life because it now gives your life added meaning. So for me, a better life is the continuous cycle of small, even minuscule improvements. Thank you for listening to this interview with Allie. All of the links mentioned in the show are in the show notes. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you use to listen to podcasts, and if you haven't done so already, please leave us an honest review. Last but not least, go to our website and sign up for our newsletters, which come out twice a month, so you do not miss out on anything important.